Eddie Norgard is a golden example of how hard work, creativity, and purpose can propel a talented young person in the camp industry. Eddie is a super successful YMCA professional with a creative mind and an abundance of optimism, plus an interesting career, going from an entry-level YMCA worker with a scouting background to one of the young leaders in our industry in less than a decade. You're going to love this guy. This is the Day Camp Pod.
This is the Day Camp Pod from Go Camp Pro, bringing you the best ideas, strategies, and discussions in the day camp industry. You can find our show notes at daycamppodcast.com.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will ensure that your camp thrives. Explore their website today at CRS4Rec. CRS is serious about fun. Scheduling shouldn't be so difficult and take as much time as it does. Come check out Camptivities to learn all about their scheduling tools, and they're specifically designed for camps by camp people. Save time, get rid of the mistakes, and get back to enjoying your summer. Find out more at camptivities.com. Let me tell you about CampMinder, the #1 camp database in the world. It has the most robust offerings of service features found anywhere. Every feature works together to create a full, seamless system that helps your camp office run more efficiently while giving your camp family state-of-the-art communication and financial tools. Check out the details at campminder.com. Welcome back to the Day Camp Podcast. I'm Andy Pritikin, Director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District in Crystal Lake, Illinois.
And today we are joined by Eddie Norgard. How's it going,
Hello.
Eddie?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time and glad to be on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's just dive in, Eddie. I got to meet you last year through our buddy Dan Weir. We did a tri-state session together, but getting to know you and your background was actually the coolest part of the whole experience for me, because there's a lot of people that listen to the Day Camp Podcast that are not private camp day camps with picket fences going around it and like the perfect little situation. And there's actually more people like you that have lived your kind of sort of working your way through the YMCA thing, and then like Sam doing the recreation thing, Girl Scouts, JCCs, all these kind of things. That's actually the normal day camp. Not to mention when Sam and I go to ACA National and we do like our day camp stuff there, the room is filled with people running day camps at zoos and gardens and museums and all that kind of funky stuff too. So I like the non-traditional aspect of things you do. But where did you actually grow up, Eddie?
Yeah, so I born and raised New Jersey, so always been here in the tri-state area.
Yeah, and then like, so where did your parents throw you as a kid to experience some sort of day camp kind of thing?
Yeah. So the background behind me actually is the camp that I grew up going to. So I was a overnight camper at Camp Runnequa, which was part of 10 Mile River Scouting Camps in Narrowsburg, New York. So my camping experience from a day camp perspective started a little bit earlier than that, but probably about around the age of 10 was when I started going to overnight camp every summer from 10 until I became a CIT around 17. And yeah, that's where my camp journey began. I fell in love with it immediately.
So from scouting, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting
Yes.
at, right?
Yeah, I'm an Eagle Scout. So, yep.
Awesome. So you started as like the little whatever Tiger Scouts and all that thing and worked your way all the way up?
Yep. All the way up.
That's awesome, man. I was a scout leader for my kids because I couldn't take it. I couldn't take watching these volunteer dads like acting it up. I was just like,
my dad did the same thing. He became the scoutmaster of my troop shortly after I left it, but my little brother got to reap the benefits, or maybe the not so great benefits of that.
Yeah, and it just goes back to what I was saying before. Is it's like most people in America, like they get in through these small nonprofit kind of ways, and they get their foot in the door through camping.
Eddie, what was your project to become an Eagle Scout?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I became an Eagle Scout around the time where the bee crisis was kind of at its peak. So I built mason bee homes to line the fence of Duke Farms community garden here in Hillsborough, New Jersey. So I think I built about 25 bee homes, and they're still up to this day. And they obviously help pollinate and all of that. It was great being able to work with Duke Farms. They helped fund the project. But kind of at that early age, had to learn how to ask for funding and go to like a whole meeting and present my project idea and all of that. So I attribute a lot of my success to my scouting career for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. And I just recommend to any camp people out there, when you have a young person on your staff that says that they're going to be an Eagle Scout, you need to jump on that and be like, hey, how about some bee things around here or some bat things, which I have at my house or excuse me, at my camp and or like a giant display unit that shows all the different nature things in that lake behind you and all those kind of things. Like you can really get a win-win situation out of that. And
They
great.
built a little playhouse at my preschool. One of the guys did, and another one built our fire rings. So yeah, they do these wonderful projects that really are good for camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely wonderful. The impact that scouting makes, whether it's Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, it builds really great young people for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So you work your way through school.
Yes.
Okay. So then at what point in your life did you think maybe I'll do this camp thing, this youth development thing?
Yeah, so interesting kind of journey. So I did my undergrad at Rutgers University. I was a biology major, and my original thought was that I was going to become a doctor. And I quickly realized I did not want to do that anymore, probably in my sophomore year. But I think I was more afraid of telling my folks that I was going to change my major. So I kind of just continued with it, but just knew I needed to kind of find a different path. And something that I had really never done before was work with children. And I didn't have that competency or skill set. And I'm always trying to level up and kind of plug the gaps in my resume and my repertoire, if you will. So I wanted to kind of venture into the nonprofit sector. I didn't know how to start, but the Y was local to me. And I had some interactions with the Y in my early life, again, through scouting, whether it was a merit badge or doing a requirement in the local pool. So I decided to hit up my neighborhood YMCA where I grew up and take some part-time hours as an after-school counselor. So I started that and quickly kind of just rose through the ranks from there. Within 6 months, I landed a full-time gig with the Y, more in the administrative side in our membership department. But as time kind of went on, I kind of became known as the person that would plug all the gaps and really help bridge any vacancies that we had. I'm a jack of all trades by nature innately. So what ended up happening was that actually one of the individuals that originally hired me, who was our camp director, youth development director, she moved on to a different YMCA, and that created a vacancy in her role. And we kind of struggled to find someone before camp was starting. So my executive director threw me in and was like, hey, if you want to try this out, go for it. I was like, yeah, I have camping experience from that firsthand being a camper world. I'll give it a shot. So I gave it a shot, had some really great staff, and it just flowed out of me naturally. And I instantly fell in love. And then from there, continued on, obviously had my one camp, and then it grew into 2 camps. And then for whatever reason, people believed in me and trusted me, and I became the subject matter expert somewhere around a year or 2 in. And I began leading all of our youth development leaders across our association of YMCAs, which put a portfolio of 7 different camps underneath my belt. So yeah, it was a wild journey. Didn't really think I would be where I was or that it would go that way, but it was an amazing journey, and I am forever grateful for it.
Well, we're still in like the first part of the book here, Eddie.
Oh yeah.
So hold on, let's just go a little deeper into some of these things that you're talking about. So you started with this first camp, right? So was this a camp that was like in the backyard of the Y, or did it have any woods or anything like that? Like, was it out of school?
Yeah, it was all the camps that I have had the pleasure of working with have been very unique and different from each other. So this camp was called Camp Sunburst, and it was located at the Somerville Y. If you're familiar with Somerville or not, it's a kind of quasi-suburban/urban community. So you have a classic downtown area, then you also have kind of the outskirts suburbs. The Y was located about 2 blocks from Main Street. So we were still in that kind of quasi-urban section of the town, but then starting to get into the suburban. The property had very little green space. So camp was located on a blacktop. We did work with the rec department because there was a municipal park across the street, kind of like classic baseball field, just basic fields of grass. And so we were able to utilize some of that space as well. But the bulk of our camp did actually exist on a blacktop. So actually just kind of through some innovative practices and working with our facilities guy, we ended up pitching up a kind of medium-sized, large, like circus tent, if you will. And that's where camp existed. It was our home base. It's where we did arts and crafts and STEM and all of that. But then we took sports inside to our basketball gymnasium. We utilized classroom space inside. So we had to be very creative. It definitely was not your classic camp, nothing traditional by any means, and definitely exercised me outside of my comfort zone because I had never experienced camp that way. I had always been roughing it in the woods, grass, tents, lean-tos, no cell phone signal. Lucky if you get an actual bathroom with running water. Like none of that stuff didn't have any of the luxuries growing up going to camp. But we had kind of a building, but also being outside on the blacktop was very different for me. I think kids should touch grass. So it was very weird setting to operate in.
And how old were you at this point?
21,
Awesome.
22.
So you had this great experience being at a scout camp, right? And actually getting that, like the dirt between your toes vibe and the pit toilets. And I'm joking, but maybe not. But
No, you're not joking.
I went to a scout camp with my kids once, but what is to you, what is the essence of camp that you can bring to a piece of blacktop and a circus tent?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. Thank you. Yeah. So I believe that camp is the space where kids can get dirty and rough it and make mistakes and just be authentic, right? And I think that's the magic of camp, right? So it's this place where you get to be whoever you want to be and hopefully your true self, right? And as kids are figuring that out in a 2-3 month period of time, and no one will know when you go back to school, right? At the end of the day. So I think I brought that essence to camp and really helped reframe and reshape what our culture was, right? I think you can run camp anywhere. And I learned that through my experience, right? Like you can run camp absolutely anywhere. It could be a blacktop, it could be in a school, it could be, again, in the woods. But as long as you bring that culture and that feeling of belonging, of exploration, of creativity, that's what makes camp, right? And we grow and develop our counselors to be the conduits of that. And in turn, our kids grasp onto all of those traits that our amazing counselors are bringing. And so I wanted to bring that feeling into this camp and to really make it something that was great. And what was even more rewarding was that camp specifically also relied heavily on county or state funding for these kids. So I had a lot of children where their camp was being paid for in part or in full by the state or internal financial assistance from the Y. So these were experiences they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And even though they were on a blacktop, I mean, they had a blast and they came back every year.
They had no frame of reference. This was camp to them. Right?
Absolutely. For sure.
This was it. And the story.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, that's super great. I hope all my friends out there on their 50-acre, beautiful wooded facilities with 9 pools and whatever are listening to this because
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source for recreation solutions that will help ensure that your camp thrives this summer. Check out their inflatable aqua park courses for pools or lakes, the prime carts, the cool little go-kart things, the emergency alert and lightning detection systems. Whoa! The splash pads. Whoa, if you got the money for that, splash pads is the way to go with the heat we got. The Zoom Flume. A lot less money and talk about the most awesome water slip and slides that you could possibly get. The jumpers, okay, for bouncing all around the place. Mini golf. The prefab cabins and pavilions and bathrooms. The shade structures. Lord, do we need shade structures these days. The shade structures cannot be beat. And of course, the playgrounds, including the ones with the cool musical components. Anyway, CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to source. Explore their website today at crs4rec.com because CRS is serious about fun.
I tell my staff at the beginning of every staff orientation at the beginning of the summer that we could have camp in our backyard. And if me and Eddie and Sam are the camp counselors, these kids are going to have a blast. There's no doubt about it. It's about the relationships and that in-between stuff. It's not about the stuff.
%.
You definitely have to be creative, but it's the culture. I'm an ACA visitor, and in the last 2 years, I think I've seen 11 YMCAs in all different situations.
Mhm.
And again, it depended on the staff at the site and what they were taught and how they were using what they had and what neighbors had, cooperating.
out of the box thinking. I mean, that's what drew me to Sam when I first met her, with her how you got to be creative with a smaller budget at a big rec program. It's the same kind of thing. So tell me more about this, because I was intrigued when I first met you about the Somerset Y and how they create all these little camps and create relationships with these towns and such like that. Because I think that even the private camps can learn a lot about that, about forming synergies with their local towns. Because when you're the YMCA, you sort of have a leg up because you're seen as like this youth development center for this area. But there's no reason why Camp Eddie in the middle of some wherever can't be seen as that too. And it takes hard work. It takes, I think that's a big thing. It takes more work than most people would want to deal with. And most YMCAs have an administrative infrastructure that's able to handle these things. So tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'll preface it by saying that anybody can do this work, right? So it's all about relationship building. There's nothing innately special about what I did or anyone else within my previous organization and how they were able to build these relationships. Anybody can knock on somebody's door. But yeah, I would say one of our most interesting camps is one that is still kind of emerging, but I think it's had its third summer now. And that was the camp that we ran out of the Franklin Township YMCA system. So Franklin Township YMCA does not actually have a building. It's what we call a Y without walls. But through a very innovative and creative process here, they've really been able to develop that relationship within the community. And one of the things that they did to start was to create a new camp. They call it Camp Soar. Their very cute logo is a little eagle. And so Camp Soar is in partnership with the county and the local municipality to fund the ability for these campers to come to camp. It's written into the budget. It was an opportunity that was developed through local officials and our development team. And essentially how this grew was that in the first couple of summers, the entire tuition was paid for by the town, by the municipality, because they believed in the importance of this camp. We were able to showcase a lot of the other camps that I was helping to guide and mentor those camp directors. And so through those accolades that we had under our belt, we were able to showcase to Franklin Township and to our county that we were a valuable resource to the children in the area.
All right, hold on a second. I got to interject. I want to keep going, but I just got to dig a little deeper in this. So
Sure.
Franklin Township is a regular sort of middle-class town.
Yes. Yep.
And so it's like the mayor, it's the township council, how in the world do they come up with a program that is not even necessarily theirs, right? That they're going to just scholarship their kids. Did that take any convincing, or was that just sort of dropped in your lap?
It definitely took a fair amount of, I wouldn't say convincing, but just kind of stating the business case of why this was important. But they also viewed the Y already kind of as a valuable partner in the community through other initiatives that we were running. We had a presence in the community as well for after school care and before school care. So that helped us to kind of bleed into the camp space as well. So to be able to talk about what can we do to serve you in the summer. And another initiative that they really felt strongly about was drowning prevention. And so for the Y, obviously we do a lot of swim lessons and all of that. And unfortunately, there's no real town pool in Franklin. And so they wanted to be able to do a camp program that infused swimming. They just didn't know how to do it because they didn't have the resources. But luckily, we were able to facilitate busing. And so we could bus kids to a nearby facility in Hillsborough and to be able to give kids swim lessons. So kind of all the perks of the YMCA were kind of built into one here to really make it a worthwhile venture for them. And they latched on pretty quickly. I would say in most cases, this is an anomaly to what maybe would happen in the real world if you were trying to jump into a rec program and try to kind of take over that camp or start one from scratch. But we definitely were able to showcase all the great things that we do to make it happen.
All right, so that's 2 camps. We got 5 more, Eddie. But
yeah, they all had their own unique flair and different style. It was very fun to be able to see every single one and operate with all of them for sure.
That's really neat. And then, because I'm just not familiar with how Ys are generally set up, the point person at each of these 7 programs, were these people who are full-timers for the Y, or were these seasonal people?
It was a mix. So the way that the structure worked, kind of me at the helm as our youth development lead, I was helping to strategize and organize all of our camp directors. So it varied. We had some senior level people that were kind of right on par with me in terms of experience. And they were full-time year-round exempt employees. And then we also had camps that ran strictly through seasonal employees. I would say my strongest achievement in camping was Camp Timber. It's located in Bridgewater at the Bridgewater YMCA. So I'll paint the picture.
Which, by the way, is a very affluent community.
Yes. Yes. Bridgewater is very affluent, but this camp specifically was not doing very well. When I was given this camp, I was actually told that we were in the process of sunsetting it. So I was told kind of run this next summer, but just know that the summer afterwards, we're probably going to choose to close it. Our enrollment was pitiful. I mean, I'm talking no more than 30 kids per week. So very little was happening there on that property. And the property itself is very unique. The Bridgewater YMCA is an aquatic center that was built in the 80s. And the aquatic center was actually originally owned by the township, sold to the Y for very cheap. And it was just a 10-lane pool, nothing else, right? We had a lot of property and green space, but it really wasn't anything crazy. We had an archery range, we had a pavilion, and a field and a volleyball court. And that was really it. No air conditioning, nothing. Just when you think of your rustic traditional camp, this is kind of that same feeling, right? So I took over this camp. It wasn't going well. And I did a complete overhaul, complete culture overhaul, instituted a new leader and a seasonal camp director. Actually, a good friend of mine who's a teacher. She's a band director in North Jersey. And I said, hey, would you be willing to do this with me? She said, sure. We overhauled that camp. We grew enrollment by over 500% within 1 to 2 years' time. We became a well-known camp in the town. So we were highly sought after. People really wanted to get in with us. Our counselor retention was great. We had the best team. Kids left every day happy and dirty because that's what we believed in. And it was just absolutely incredible. And the camp is flourishing today. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty sure it's at capacity. It really can't take any more kids, which is great. Going from almost dying to flourishing.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
What ingredients would you say helped you change your culture there?
Yeah. So the culture there was it wasn't purpose driven. There was no mission or cause to it all. Leadership lacked any type of structure. So when we came in, we really redeveloped what the counselor experience looked like. And I knew that in instituting this new camp director, what skill sets she was bringing to the table. And from that teacher perspective, she was a great lesson planner and activity creator and just very, very creative, right? So she could take nothing and create a whole magical world, right? And that was the skill set that we needed because, again, I told you about the property that we had nothing, right? So we really had to make camp happen with a rock and a stick. And we did. We made it really, really fun. And so instead of telling the counselors, I need you to come in and try to figure out how to do this, that wasn't their skill set. We were hiring people who were fun and engaging and had a lot of energy, and they were great role models for kids, but they weren't the lesson planners. I mean, they didn't know how to create an art project.
No, they're the doers, right?
Yeah, they're the doers for sure. So I kind of restructured it in a way where leadership was taking more of the front seat approach of actually figuring out what we wanted our camp to look and feel like, and allowing our counselors to really be able to come to camp and have fun. I believe camp is just as much for the counselors as it is for the kids. And so we really instituted that type of culture, and it total 180.
The best feedback I ever got was my first year of taking over a new camp. And on the plaque, they put, "Thank you for the guidance and the freedom to explore."
Yeah.
So that's a great combination, just setting the parameters and letting them create.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my dad always used to say that any of our scouts from our troop that would end up becoming a CIT and coming home after the summer were completely brand new people. He's like, they come back as men. And I believe in that for our counselors, right? I mean, that summer is just as much for them to grow and to explore and to come into themselves as people and professionals. If you do it right, you won't even recognize them at the end of the summer because they're just a whole brand new, better person than what they entered in as. So I think that's our job as camp owners, directors, to make that happen for our counselors.
Totally. And I think you articulated it perfectly, Eddie. When you said camp is just as much for the counselors as it is for the kids. And if those of us listening to this podcast haven't learned this since coming out of the pandemic, then my goodness, just freaking say that over and over like a mantra, because it's always been that way. And I think it's been relatively obvious. And I think that especially for camp like owner people, and execs, let's say, at a YMCA, they're focused on revenue,
Mhm.
right? That's the big thing. You got to have gas in the tank in order to run the car, but you got to have really good counselors to make sure that car drives well.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to end up with 30 kids going to your camp like you took over there, where you had to create a culture, right? You didn't change a culture, you created a culture, is what you had.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I always say, what's the quote? If you build it, they'll come, right? So if you build it, you won't really have to worry about the revenue in my experience. And I'm a business oriented guy. I have an MBA, so my business mindset is real strong, right? I believe in driving for revenue 100%, but I haven't had to really worry about that in the camps that I've overseen, other than that trial and error year where I took over something and needed to help it move along. After we got the foundation built and that culture was strong, the kids came. I mean, it was the talk of the town, right? So we didn't have to worry about it. They were coming and it was growing every year.
Scheduling affects every camper and every staff member's summer. It's easy to make mistakes. It takes a ton of time. Bottom line, scheduling is hard, and it doesn't have to be. Let Camptivities help you create a balanced, engaging schedule without the mistakes and without those long days and late nights. Camptivities does it all for day camps. Auto scheduling, camper and group scheduling, elective scheduling, manual adjustments, over 60 different reports, tons of customizable settings, and so much more. So don't wait until the new year. Now is the time to find a better way to schedule and save 15% on your first year. That's right, baby. The folks at Camptivities would love to show you the next big thing in camp. So get away from your desk and get back outside and play with the kids at camp. Go to camptivities.com. As a camp director, you're a leader of your camp and a pillar in your community. When your customers put tremendous trust in you, CampMinder's powerful management software tools deliver the day-to-day task support that helps you make every touchpoint moment memorable and every summer stellar. CampMinder has the most user-friendly platform for both your staff and your parents, and is backed by a team of crafty engineers and customer service associates who are constantly thinking of ways to optimize your camp's database, communication, and financial management. With state-of-the-art app for your camp families and an API available for third-party softwares, CampMinder is always evolving elite summer camp software. Check them out today at campminder.com.
I always tell my directors that the counselors are their campers, because you build with your campers, you build team building things, you do all those kind of activities, and you help them make goals. Well, you're doing the same thing with your counselors. You need to build your team with your counselors. You need to help them figure out where they're going and what their goals are. And I started doing mid-year self-evaluations, and I was so surprised the first year because every single counselor had a goal. They hadn't talked to us about it. Nobody had written it down. But when I asked, are they meeting their goals? They would write a big, long dissertation on yes and how and when. And sometimes you forget that they are driven.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And when we view them in that way, right, and we create that relationship, there's that loyalty, there's that retention. And even when they move on, because this might not be something they can do every summer, but they'll always have those positive memories and that loyalty. And if their life's path ends up guiding them towards having children, they might bring their children to your camp one day. It's all about the relationship building.
Yeah. And as I always say, the relationship between the directors and the middle management should be the same as between the middle management and the frontline staff, which should be the same as the frontline staff and the kids. It
Yep.
should be synchronized and be a beautiful thing. So, Eddie, I think one of the things that I'm getting out of this that always reminds me, because I talk to because of my son and his friends, I talk to a lot of people who are in their 20s or so, and they want to get into the camp industry, and it's so hard, and and blah 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 and all this kind of thing, and I do at points say, roll up your sleeves, work for a Y, run a camp in a park or whatever, because you could be the camp director, right? At age 21, you could. Like, and Eddie's camps that he was working at, it's in a high population dense area. This is not the middle of rural Oklahoma here we're talking about. Okay. And if they need people there, they need people everywhere. And a lot of these Ys have after school programs and such, and they're embedded in these towns, but they still need people to run their camps. And a young, motivated teacher kind of person is like, right? That's your prototype that you're looking for. So can you just talk to me about like the opportunities that are out there? Because you're going to talk about YMCA's because that's the world that you've been in for the last few years, but it's the same in JCCs and in Girl Scouts and in Boy Scouts and whatever. If you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work, there's opportunities out there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well said. Yeah, no, for sure. There are so many opportunities. And I think just having that self-confidence of being able to step into the space and be able to go for it is everything, right? From the YMCA's perspective, you're right. There's a lot of other programs that kind of revolve around camp. Camp being the epicenter for the summer, the big program.
Mhm.
We have before and after school care, enrichment camps throughout the year, sports programs, etc. So there's an opportunity to get in at any time, right? Show your stuff, show your passion, and someone will recognize you. I mean, the Y, the JCC, scouting, I mean, really any youth development
Yeah.
space.
For
Looking
age.
for that, yeah, they're looking for that up and comer, right? They want to see a young person with a lot of passion and work ethic.
Well, and also because when you're 21, 22, 23, 24, they could pay you a lot less too.
Exactly.
Let's be
That's
real.
not
These are
gonna matter, right?
nonprofits,
Yeah,
right? So there's a little bit of taking advantage of things, but it's also opportunity, you know?
100%.
And look at the experience you had in your early 20s, Eddie. That has made you the person that you are today.
Yeah.
Honestly, Eddie, I don't know how old you are. Let's just say a decade later. So I mean, better in my eyes to get a job being in charge of people, because that's really what it's about, okay, in your 20s, rather than working some big giant machine, right, where you're just parsed out this little bit of responsibility. It's like getting tossed into the deep end, thrown into the fire, whatever you want to say, whatever metaphor it is, but you learn leadership skills pretty damn fast.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and it's rewarding, right? It's gonna make you happy. It's gonna show you that you have a sincere ability to create an impact on the world, right? And I think we all should have something bigger than us that's guiding us, that's our North Star, whether it's religion or whether it's your life's purpose, whatever that is. But camp can be that 100%. And it shows people that they have this immense power to mold and shape the world that will come after them. So yeah, jump right in. You're right. A decade later, and I'm an executive leader now, and my reputation across our movement nationally, like I wasn't known at 21. I was some kid that just graduated college and was jumping into his local Y. And then a decade later, I mean, I've had all these amazing opportunities and experiences because of some really great leaders that believed in me and gave me the opportunity, but also just I attribute it back to my staff and my team and the kids. I mean, they made me successful. They latched on to what I was dishing out, and we grew and came up together. And that was the best part of it, for sure.
Okay, go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, a lot of rec departments, the starting level is usually camp before and after school, maybe preschool. That's where they start new people. But unfortunately, not all are true believers in the youth development part of this. And so they're just waiting for that athletic supervisor job, or they're wanting to be a director right out of college. And so to find good people at that level is an amazing thing. And the difference they make with their programs is unsurmountable. It's the the
Yeah,
desire and the belief
you're
in what
boots
we
on the ground,
do.
you're rubber to the road. You're like you're helping the people that need it the
Yep.
most. So it's very rewarding on that level. What about financially, Eddie? I mean, that's the thing that I wonder about young people working full time at YMCA's and these kind of things. This is the kind of stuff that I get feedback on, where people that are trying to get into private camping, because I know executive directors of YMCA's make more money than I do, but then there's the frontline people.
Yeah. Well, what I will say is that I think camp is the best space to get into in your younger years because of a lot of the great benefits that you can get from it. Now, there's obviously day camp, which may not afford you some of these opportunities, but the Y is multifaceted in that there are resident camp opportunities, and a lot of times day camps are also run out of resident camps too. So you may be a day camp person, maybe that's where you gravitate more towards, but you can secure a day camp director or coordinator position at a resident camp, and that will a lot of times come with housing. And that's, I mean, that's all of our biggest expense, right? Is
Right.
housing. But if you're okay with jumping into maybe not the best camp house, but it's adequate and a place to live and a roof on top of your head, for you to be able to start your career and grow and move forward from that point on, I would look for those resident camps that are hiring. You can't get free housing anywhere else. It's
Yeah.
really hard.
Well, unless you do what you did and basically stay in Somerset County for the first 10 years of your life.
Yes. Yeah. My parents have been very nice to me.
Because yeah, from Rutgers to wherever, like you didn't really go far for a while.
Right.
Eddie, tell us about this organization that you are now chairing. This young people of diversity thing or whatever, please. It sounds super cool, and the pictures you had from your retreat were excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm involved in a few different projects nationally with the Y. So one project that I've been in for a few years, but I've now become the chair of this, is what we call the Empowered Leaders Resource Network. And this is one of the 8 sanctioned employee resource groups across the YMCA movement here in the US. The group originally, the origin name was the Emerging Leaders Resource Network. And so it originally was crafted for young individuals, usually under the age of 30, to really help grow and develop them. They were viewed as a group, a marginalized group, if you will, maybe experiencing that ageism in the workforce. But under our previous chair, Bobby Thomas, who's a big name in camping as well within the Y, he really believed in a different vision for this group where anybody can be an emerging leader at any time. We can all share stories of perhaps that person in their 50s who has had a career change and now they're re-emerging, right? So we felt it was a disservice to folks by only focusing on those under the age of 30. So we rebranded to the Empowered Leaders Resource Network because we just believe in bringing out that power and that empowerment that we all have for ourselves that sometimes is a little dormant, but just needs to be reignited to help people really grow. So yeah, recently we were in Virginia Beach and we had our annual strategy meeting, and this was kind of the official crossover. So Bobby passed on the torch to me to now be the chair over the next couple of years. And I'm really looking forward to moving us forward in a way where we can provide resources to staff within the Y movement, focusing again on those younger staff, but also on those staff that are maybe in a different spot in their career and need some support and guidance.
That's great. Just do me a favor when we're done with this podcast, shoot me an email and send links to this group and
Sure.
any other groups that you think would be great for the people listening to be able to consider joining and such.
Sounds great.
All right. We have a lot of listeners in the YMCA space, but not just that, just other great young people who are really interested in finding their like collegial friends and mentors along the way, which is just so important. As that's so great that you've been able to sort of get out of your little regional area and bounce around. It's such an important thing. As Sam and I know, we have so many friends and colleagues around the country that teach us so much on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
And I just have to touch on, so you were killing it in this amazing space in Somerset, New Jersey, and then you got this great opportunity to work in Atlanta, and then what happened? Like did you actually get to Atlanta, or were you packing your car?
Yeah. So yeah, I was definitely in the moving phase. Unfortunate, and I don't want to speak ill about anybody, but I'll give a quick synopsis about it. Yeah, so I had been with Greater Somerset County YMCA for about 8.5 years. That's where I started my Y career. And I was really looking to kind of move on to a new space. You hit on this earlier, and I've always kind of been in this area, and I've been looking to explore and just kind of branch out. And my organization had been very good to me, had always believed in my development and my growth. I had received several promotions while being there, but I was kind of at this point where there was not really much more that I could do in that space. And it was getting stale. And being able to have that open relationship with my leaders and saying, I'm looking for something more, I need to move on. They luckily were able to, I was lucky that they were able to support that with me. And so we mutually moved on together, and I found this position in Atlanta that I thought would be a really great opportunity for me. It kind of catered to both sides of my passions. So it was going to have me overseeing a traditional YMCA branch location, as well as a 22-acre day camp property. And I was really excited about both of those operations. And unfortunately, they reached out a few weeks after I had accepted the offer and was starting to move, and informed me that they had a reconsideration of staffing needs and that they were no longer going to be proceeding with me. So effectively rescinding that offer. Definitely a crazy turn of events. Like I said, I was in the process of moving, had spent a lot of money already getting ready to move and relocate pretty far ways away from where I was. And really with very little answers from the organization, trying to understand, where they were at and why and were there other opportunities, but it kind of was ghosted a little bit, unfortunately. And, that opportunity didn't pan out. So I am a free agent here on the market again.
Which is not why we're having this podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
I reached out to Eddie thinking that he was working in Atlanta at this point. Right?
Yeah. I thought I would be too. Today was actually supposed to be my first day.
Yeah. But, whatever. Now people know about Eddie and how awesome he is. And look, we're camp people, Eddie. We deal with crap like this. The tree falls down, the electricity's out, like whatever. We're made for this kind of thing. And I would not even be a camp professional if it wasn't for the fact that my first job out of college got rescinded the day I showed up. Now, I didn't move, but the day I showed up and walked in the office, they were like, we changed our mind about this. It's not you, blah, blah, blah. And then I went back and got my master's in education and went down a different path. So yeah, one door closes, one door opens. And
I think a lot of people that have been in the business have had some lemons along the way that made you think, oh, am I going the right way? But you're going the right way. So now you just got to find the right spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all about finding the right place to be. And camp people are resilient. And I think camp people actually experience things like this more than anybody else maybe in this type of industry. Yeah, it happens to people all the time, and they restructure or enrollments down, or a pandemic happens. There's been a lot of movement. So yeah, I'll be okay. I'm looking, I'm out there. I got some good connections, but it'll be great. I'll land somewhere that will definitely allow me to be part of camp still and to help me grow my career.
Yeah. Well, maybe until then, Dan Weir can use you as a consultant.
Yes. I've been in touch with my friend Dan. Don't worry.
Yeah, you got a lot to offer. And you said something earlier that having purpose is really important. I was listening to a great podcast the other day about the blue zones where people live to 100. And one of the main reasons is people waking up with purpose. Yep. And like you said, camp is a great vehicle for us to sustain our purpose, which is helping make the world a better place and helping on the next generation. So thank you, Eddie, for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
It's nice to meet you.
You as well. Thank you. It's a joy.
Keep doing good work.
Thank you.
And we want to thank Camptivities, Commercial Recreation Specialists, and Campminder. And of course, the folks at Go Camp Pro for allowing us to bring this podcast to you. If you like what you hear, you should subscribe to the Day Camp Pod on your favorite podcast platform. Check out our show notes from all of our episodes at daycamppodcast.com, as well as contact info for the show, for our guest, Eddie Norgard, and for me and my co-host, Sam Thompson. Thanks for listening and making yourself a better Day Camp Pro. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Day Camp Pod.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by Go Camp Pro and the Go Camp Pro Podcast Network. Find a podcast for camp professionals of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Thanks for listening, friends. Hey, Camp Pros. We love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, we hope that whenever you share an idea that you learned from the Camp Hacker podcast, conference, summer camp professionals group, or wherever else, that you're quick to give credit where credit is due. That way, we can all encourage more camp pros to share the tips and tricks that will make camp better.